A Supreme Court victory for unions. How Justice Scalia's passing leads to deadlock. Hijacked Egyptian plane. What we're learning about the suspect and his possible motives. Outmaneuvering Planned Parenthood. The pro-life state-by-state strategy to limit abortions. And Mother Angelica remembered. An American Catholic leader explains her impact on the church. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Easter Tuesday, March 29th, 2016. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick, and just days after hearing the case of the Little Sisters of the Poor, the U.S. Supreme Court takes an unusual step today. The High Court tells both sides to discuss alternative ways to avoid forcing the women religious to provide services against their faith. The administration insists women covered under the Little Sisters health plan have access to cost-free birth control. The justices today direct both sides to file a new round of legal briefs by April 20th. Attorneys for the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, representing the Little Sisters and other faith-based groups, are encouraged.
The court also indicated that it's not happy with the current scheme. It's asking for alternatives to the current scheme that the government has proposed. So we think that that's a really positive development. If they were happy with the accommodation, then they would be ruling that the accommodation is okay.
Becket lawyers are convinced the Supreme Court understands the sisters' concerns that the government's accommodation forces them to violate their religion. Also today, the High Court deadlocks, handing a huge win to labor unions. Justices vote 4-4 in a high-profile case over mandatory union fees. Wyatt Goolsby reports.
The justices' divided decision today effectively keeps in place a 40-year-old precedent. The case was whether public employees represented by a union can be required by law to pay a fair share fee, even if they are not members. The lead plaintiff was Rebecca Friedrichs. The veteran Orange County teacher resigned from the California Teachers Association because she disagreed with their policies. But she was still required to pay several $100s in fees. She says those fees violate the rights of teachers who disagree with the union.
If you don't walk lockstep with the union's positions, with collective bargaining and their political positions, you are ignored and silenced.
In January, Friedrichs received support from conservative groups across the country, saying the fees are an infringement on teachers' liberty. But union supporters disagree.
Join together through our unions.
Labor leaders call today's decision a victory. They say the lawsuit was a coordinated effort by conservative groups to weaken labor rights.
We really see those corporate interests are not going to stop their attacks. Anything that is in line with limiting our ability to advocate for our students, advocate for our colleagues.
The case affects more than 5 million workers in 23 states and Washington, D.C. Before the late Justice Antonin Scalia's death, the court appeared as if it was going to strike down the precedent, but his death leaves the court without a majority to rule. This is the first major case since his death to result in a tie. Brian?
Thank you. Wyatt Goolsby at the U.S. Supreme Court. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. An Egyptian man is in custody tonight after allegedly hijacking an Egypt Air plane during a routine domestic flight. The Cairo-bound flight was forced to land on the island of Cyprus. Authorities there say the man surrendered after eventually releasing all the passengers and crew. Officials in Cyprus say the incident does not appear to be connected to terrorism. They say the hijacker had tried to communicate with his Cypriot ex-wife who lives on the island. He also demanded the release of female prisoners from Egyptian jails. Security was tighter than normal this morning at the U.S. Capitol complex after a scare there on Monday. Officers shot and wounded 66-year-old Larry Dawson of Tennessee. They say he pulled a weapon at a security checkpoint entering the underground Capitol Visitor Center. Dawson underwent surgery late Monday and was reported in stable but critical condition today. He is charged with assault with a deadly weapon and assault on a police officer while armed. Court documents show Dawson had been ordered to stay away from the Capitol after disrupting a House session last year. The extraordinary legal fight pitting the Obama administration against technology giant Apple ends unexpectedly. The FBI says it's been able to hack into a California mass shooter's iPhone without Apple's help. Left unanswered, however, are questions about how this sudden development could affect privacy in the future. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker endorses Texas Senator Ted Cruz for the Republican presidential nomination. Walker announced his decision today on local talk radio, saying it's time to elect a strong new leader. When Walker ended his presidential bid last year, he called on others to drop out of the race, making it easier to defeat Donald Trump. He says he believes Cruz is the only Republican who can do that now. Trump insists his campaign manager is absolutely innocent of battery charges filed against him by police in Florida. The charge is connected with an incident involving a reporter March 8th in Jupiter, Florida. Surveillance video appears to show Corey Lewandowski, seen here in the left in an unrelated photo, grabbing reporter Michelle Field's arm as she tried to ask Trump a question. Trump said his manager, quote, will enter a plea of not guilty and looks forward to his day in court. Trump questions whether he will take part in tonight's CNN Republican town hall in Milwaukee. He says the network is being one-sided and unfair by focusing on his opponents. With Americans dying by the thousands from heroin overdoses, President Obama attends a drug abuse summit in Atlanta today. Lauren Ashburn details the administration's approach to curbing the opioid epidemic.
Brian, the main topic of discussion was opioids that include prescription painkillers like morphine and illegal narcotics such as heroin. The president made clear that addressing this issue is a priority for the administration. 30,000 people died from overdoses in 2014. Mr. Obama outlined three main objectives: expand access to treatment, prevent overdose deaths, and increase community prevention strategies. President Obama called for a stronger bipartisan commitment to combat the rampant spread of prescription drug abuse.
This is not something that's just restricted to a small set of communities. This is affecting everybody, young, old, men, women, children, rural, urban, suburban.
Last month, the president proposed $1.1 billion to address the epidemic. Today, the White House added to that by proposing to increase from 100 to 200 the number of prescriptions of the anti-addiction drug buprenorphine that can be issued by each doctor. And it will make available $94 million for 271 community health drug treatment centers and create an interagency task force to advance access to mental health and substance abuse treatment. Brian, the new task force has until October 31st to implement these actions. Critics say that giving drugs to those already addicted to drugs is risky and could result in relapse or increased addiction. Brian.
Thank you, Lauren, our chief White House correspondent and political director. President Obama meets Thursday with China's president as world leaders discuss nuclear security here in Washington. Jason Calvi reports from the Capitol tonight about the direction some want Obama to take on this crucial issue. Jason?
Yeah, Brian, right here, some activists and one lawmaker say the president needs to speak forcefully about human rights in an upcoming meeting with China's president. Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey says the president has been too soft in pushing for improved human rights in China. Some of the Chinese people speaking today shed tears talking about their seized property. Others talked about being jailed, as well as troubles that Christians are experiencing.
People's voice in China cannot be heard by their government. So we have to take a long way to come here to make our voice heard by our own leaders. You know, many people suffered all kinds of sufferings.
So I said, well, what specifically can President Obama do? What more can he do? The activists here said he should speak specifically about specific dissidents in China that have been jailed for speaking out for religion, for human rights. They also said that the president should speak publicly about these matters during his meeting this week with the Chinese president. Brian?
Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Thank you, Jason. People in Brussels pay tribute to the victims of last week's terror attacks. They gathered today in the central Brussels Place de la Bourse. It's become a symbolic rallying point for people to pay their respects to those who died and were injured. Last Tuesday, suicide bombings killed nearly 36 people and injured hundreds more. The Brussels subway system is operating again. The international airport has yet to reopen. Mourners in Pakistan hold a vigil for the victims of the Easter Sunday suicide bombing that targeted Christians. The terror attack killed more than 70 people, including women and children. A Taliban group that supports ISIS claims responsibility. Clare Lopez is Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy. Is the Pakistan government's effort, or their commitment as they call it, to stopping these extremists, do you think that's legitimate? Will it deter more attacks?
One can only hope so. This attack on Easter Sunday against these Christians in a park, women and children among them, was horrific. The problem here is that the Taliban itself, and thereby its Pakistan offshoot of the Taliban responsible for this attack, the original Taliban is a creation of the Pakistani intelligence service. And it is the Pakistani intelligence service that works with, to this day, so many of these terrorist organizations in Pakistan, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, Taliban. They have to be brought to account for what they have done, and they have to stop their support for these terrorist organizations.
There are extremists protesting in Pakistan right now, insisting that Sharia law, Islamic law, be enforced. Can Christians even survive in an environment like that?
Well, we have to take note, Brian, that these are not extremists. These are up-the-middle, straight, orthodox, authoritative Muslims. They are following the law, the commandment of Islam. It is a very dangerous situation for Christians over there, or for any who don't really want to live under Sharia, under Islamic law. But that is the law that is in Pakistan's constitution.
And you claim that there's an involvement, a connection between that and even the attack in San Bernardino.
Well, we know that the woman, the wife, in the pair that shot up the center in San Bernardino, Tashfeen Malik, went to university in a university in the Punjab between 2007 and 2013. And it was during that time that her own relatives in the area noticed a change in her demeanor, her dress, her behavior. She criticized them for not behaving according to Islam properly.
So she was radicalized.
She was recruited by somebody during those years.
Okay. From the Center for Security Policy, Clare Lopez, thank you for your unique insight.
Thank you.
Devout believer and media pioneer among the descriptions used for the late Mother Angelica. A statement from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops President reads in part, Mother Angelica reflected the gospel commission to go forth and make disciples of all nations. And like the best evangelists, she used the communications tools of her time to make this happen. Archbishop Joseph Kurtz joining us by Skype from Louisville. And as the USCCB president, Archbishop, what can you tell us about Mother Angelica and her contribution to the church on behalf of your brother bishops?
Well, Brian, let me say her passing away on Easter Day says volumes. A devout believer in Jesus, a woman religious extraordinaire, and of course, a pioneer communicator. She leaves a legacy that will not be forgotten.
We know her as foundress of EWTN. We've all seen her on Mother Angelica Live, but she made many other contributions within the church, did she not?
She did, and most especially in religious life. She was the foundress of a number of religious communities, and it would be a litany for me to mention each one by name, but her presence in promoting the consecrated life has been such a gift to the church.
So her legacy really includes a very powerful message then about the role, especially of women religious in our church.
It does. It really does. And one of the things that I think is so unique about her role as a woman religious, someone of the consecrated life, is she was able to relate to the person in the pew, as we often say, to the person in their living room who was engaged with her over the television. She just had an uncanny ability to be present with people. Pope Francis talks about that capacity to be present to the people, to see the person and to respect them. I think Mother Angelica brings all of that forward.
Yes, and Francis has that as well. And finally, just any personal thought that you'd like to share about Mother and her influence on you as a priest, as a shepherd?
Well, my primary information on her and impact has been in her capacity to communicate, to use every avenue available to us for the new evangelization. And I think she has been the hallmark and standard in so many ways of us all reaching out to others, and I think has influenced me dramatically.
And we thank you for doing that with us tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Your Excellency, Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brian.
Coming up, a new pro-life strategy to limit abortions, how advocates are countering Planned Parenthood. And the Heritage Foundation's Ryan Anderson discusses challenges to religious liberty in several states.
She has helped draw millions of people back to the faith. It is a great gift of God.
Everyday people reflecting on Mother Angelica's legacy. Our EWTN foundress died Easter Sunday evening. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday. I'm Brian Patrick, and Florida is the latest state to cut Planned Parenthood's funding. Governor Rick Scott signed a bill to that effect last week. Catherine Szeltner reports tonight on the pro-life push nationwide.
Over the past year, more than a dozen states have tried blocking Planned Parenthood's public funds. Texas was one of the first. In Ohio, a recently signed law will strip about $1.3 million government dollars away from Planned Parenthood. And in Wisconsin, pro-life leaders have cut back the abortion providers' funding for several years now.
I like to believe that other states look to Wisconsin to see what we are doing to protect the most vulnerable.
The head of Wisconsin Right to Life credits the state's leaders for its pro-life strides. Just last month, Governor Scott Walker signed 2 bills expected to cost Planned Parenthood $8 million per year in federal funds. Wisconsin Right to Life says other clinics will now get that money.
We care so much about women in this state that we want them to have more options for care. And that's what these bills are going to allow for now.
Moves to defund Planned Parenthood come as the group faces an ongoing congressional investigation.
We have a very specific charge. It is to look at the medical practices of those abortion providers and the procurement organizations.
It's an investigation many abortion advocates want to see end. But the New York Times recently pointed out the House committee may have already found evidence of illegal activity between abortion providers and scientists over the sale of aborted baby parts.
The House started its investigation after the release of the undercover Planned Parenthood videos. The man behind those videos, David Daleiden, faced off with the abortion giant in a California federal court today. Daleiden says his message to Planned Parenthood hasn't changed. Game on. Brian.
Thank you, Catherine Szeltner. And facing pressure from large companies, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal refuses to sign a religious freedom bill. It would protect clergy and others who refuse to take part in non-traditional marriages. Ryan Anderson is religious liberty researcher with the Heritage Foundation. Do you believe the governor of Georgia is succumbing to pressure from big business?
Oh, without a doubt. The people of Georgia wanted this religious liberty bill signed into law. It passed overwhelmingly in both of their houses. It was big business lobbyists, many of whom were out of state, some of whom were in state. Coca-Cola and Delta have headquarters in Atlanta. It's a form of cronyism, cultural cronyism. We can see big business collude with big government to rig economics in their favor. They can also do it to rig culture in their favor.
We've seen this sort of before, where in Indiana, Governor Pence had actually signed a bill, but then recanted when he came under pressure. Is this a trend we're going to face now on religious liberty?
Unfortunately, what we're seeing right now is that the corporate interests are lining up with the cultural left. They're picking sides in a culture war, and big businesses said they're on the sides of the progressives, they're on the sides of the liberals, and they're now using their outsized market share to exert economic pressure to have the government impose their cultural values. They did it in Indiana, they just did it in Georgia, they're currently doing it, or they're trying to do it in North Carolina.
Tell us about the North Carolina bill that's being challenged by the ACLU.
Yeah, so it's the ACLU's filed a lawsuit just yesterday on this bill, and big business again is boycotting. It's the NBA has threatened to move the All-Star game out of Charlotte because of this. This law does 2 things. It says, 1, private businesses and schools can do whatever they want with their bathrooms, but government-run bathrooms are going to be based upon birth certificate, biological sex. And the governor's office even says, and if you're transgender, you can always change your birth certificate, but we want a formal process here. We want it to be something official. Second policy is that we're not going to have a city-by-city regulation of employment and public accommodations. We're going to have one law for the entire state. So it preempted Charlotte's sexual orientation law, and so now there's a backlash saying that this was an anti-gay bill. It's a bill for uniformity, saying one policy for the entire state.
Ryan Anderson with the Heritage Foundation. We always appreciate your experience and insight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Up next, more memories of Mother Angelica, including personal reflections from her biographer, Raymond Arroyo. And a leading Catholic in Congress talks about Mother's influence on his life.
Her own thoughts, her own meditations were always beautiful, and she had a very great way about her that she was just very approachable, very spiritual.
People sharing their stories about the late Mother Angelica, the foundress of EWTN. May she rest in peace. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday in the octave of Easter. I'm Brian Patrick. Mother Angelica's body has now been received at the monastery and shrine that she founded in Huntsville, Alabama. As people around the world pay tribute, Jason Calvi talks with a member of Congress about his memories of Mother.
Brian, we're here with Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey. What did Mother Angelica mean to you personally?
She was a walking saint, and of course now a saint in heaven. A woman who inspired, who provided all of us a venue, a network that brought our faith, into further clarity. The discussions, the people she was able to hire, are just points of light, if you will, for Catholicism. And I think if ever there was a network that was needed, particularly given today's TV, it was EWTN, and she was the pioneer. And she would say the rosary. My wife and I would join in and say the rosary with her. Her sense of humor, her piety, and above all, her faith. It just was contagious.
And moving forward, what do you think her legacy will be as we look back on her life?
Well, I think her legacy has been to strengthen both intellectually as well as from a sacrificial point of view, the importance of giving of ourselves as Catholics to society, service to others, to take the gospel in its wholeness into living. And EWTN has provided, even the coverage of the popes and things going on in the Vatican. You didn't get it any better than watching EWTN, particularly with the incisive commentary that always followed.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Smith, for sharing your time with us. I appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
And Brian, back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you, Jason. In her faithfulness, Mother Angelica took huge financial risks to establish and grow EWTN. We talked about that with her biographer, the World Over host Raymond Arroyo.
From the very beginning, she was just a gutsy, streetwise girl. She often told me, people look at me now, they have one vision. She said, I'm a street woman who had faith and things happened. That was her conception of self, which was kind of jarring, but it really helped me to peel back the layers and build the story from the bottom up. She was constantly willing to take risks, not only for her religious life, but also for this network. She would push everything to the middle of the table. They rarely had money. They almost went broke a number of times. The bishops wanted to take her over. Businessmen wanted to buy her out. She fought back every time, and she used to say, I practice Franciscan providence, the belief in providence. And I said, what do you mean? She said, you take one step, and the grace comes as you step. He never gives you the whole thing. He never shows you the whole path. Just one step at a time.
But the faith fueled the risk.
Absolutely. Without the faith, she'd never do it. She was a lover of Christ, particularly in the Blessed Sacrament. And it wasn't conceptual. Many of us go, oh yeah, with Jesus, Mother Angelica, even into her old age, when the Eucharist was brought into the room, she would rise from the bed, open her arms. It was like her lover was walking into the room. Indeed. And from the beginning, from a young girl to her last breath, that affection, that deep passion for Jesus, and not only what he was calling her to do, but his person and who he was, she honored it and she loved him to the very end.
Passion, spunk. You talked about her pithy thoughts and all this. But some of the networks have it wrong. They call her soft-spoken. Far from it.
That's not the Rita Rizzo I knew. No, she could be, look, Mother could be tough. And when she didn't like something, expect that your phone would have rung. Mine did. And she go, why do you have that guy on? Who is he? Get him off of there. I never want to see him again. And then it was, whoa, come down here. We need to talk. I thought, oh, boy. I got those calls quite often, I'll have you know. We had a wonderful relationship, but it was a I saw the full spectrum of Mother Angelica. I didn't just get the folksy teaching, sweet grandma. I got the tough love grandma, too. And that's what made her so compelling on television. When she looked into the camera, people felt she's honest, she's gutsy,
genuine.
She's giving it to me as I need it. And she's speaking the truth. The things she says actually work. They are actually true. And the letters I've been getting over the last few days, the emails have been Unbelievable. Marriages healed, people getting off of drugs, kids coming back to the faith, all from a chance viewing of a little old nun in Birmingham, Alabama. She was amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing your special relationship, Raymond.
I loved her. Thank you.
EWTN honors our late foundress, Mother Angelica, with special programs this week. You can watch a special live show with the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word. It's tonight at 8 Eastern, tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern. Our network airs a public visitation and rosary. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We close tonight revisiting this afternoon's rite of reception of Mother Angelica's body at the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament in Hanceville, Alabama.